listening to Union Strong NJSPBA Voices Podcast. The intro is brought to you by the New Jersey State PBA-owned Federal Credit Union, offering competitive rates and fast loan approval. Visit www.njspbafcu.org. Hello and welcome to episode 47 of Union Strong NJSPBA Voices Podcast. I'm your host, Vinny Rizzo, and today we are talking to Debbie LaSalle, retired PBA member and current Local 600 Disability Retirement Liaison. On the morning of January 28, 2000, while directing traffic, actually attempting to stop traffic for a child walking to school, she was struck by a vehicle and suffered a traumatic brain injury that, in effect, erased that day and incident from her memory and left her in a coma for 2 weeks. 25 years later, and that incident has redefined her life and calling. When you put on the uniform, you never think about the day it might be taken from you. Not because you've reached the finish line of your career, but because your body, your health, or your circumstances have forced you to stop. Being disabled in the line of duty isn't just an injury, it's a fracture in your identity. For years, you've been trained to run toward danger when everyone else runs away. Your routine, your friendships, your sense of purpose, all of it built around serving. And then, in an instant, a call goes wrong, a moment unfolds that you couldn't have predicted, and suddenly, the very thing you devoted your life to is gone. Retirement becomes less of a choice and more of a sentence. There's grief in that. Let's call it what it is. You grieve the loss of your career, your badge, your role in the brotherhood and sisterhood of law enforcement. You grieve the loss of the daily adrenaline, the camaraderie in the squad room, the sense that you mattered in every moment. And you grieve the future you had pictured for yourself. But here's the truth that no one says out loud often enough. Being forced into retirement doesn't erase who you are. You may not be able to patrol the streets anymore, but the courage, the instincts, and the heart that made you run toward danger still live in you. The job may have been taken, but the calling can't be stolen. The road forward is not easy. It means rebuilding identity outside of the shield. It means asking for help when you've spent a lifetime being the one who shows up for others. It means finding purpose in new places. Whether that's mentoring younger officers, advocating for the injured, or simply learning how to breathe again without the weight of the vest. To every officer forced into retirement because of a line of duty disability, know this. Your career may have ended, but your story has not. You are still a protector, still a part of this family, still someone who gave more than most could ever imagine giving. The fight doesn't stop here. It just changes. And you don't have to walk this new path alone. Because while the uniform may be gone, the bond, the brotherhood, and the respect you've earned will never fade. We hope you enjoy the episode. So Debbie, let's start at the beginning. Tell us a bit about your law enforcement career. What led you into the profession?
Well, that's an interesting question. My law enforcement career lasted only about 5 years, so I guess what I thought was my calling turned out to be a fork in the road. The idea of becoming a police officer never really crossed my mind. I grew up watching cop shows, especially Policewoman with Andy Dickinson, but it never really caught my interest. My college degree was in psychology. I thought I'd become a therapist, helping people. Funny, little did I know that I'd be using it every day in a different way. It wasn't until my husband, at the time, decided that he wanted to pursue a career in law enforcement. As he went through the police academy, I began to listen and learn about the line of work. An opportunity to apply for the alternate route program presented itself, and then it was the beginning of my law enforcement career. I didn't know what to expect. I figured I could either run away crying or I could just suck it up and take it. In the end, I decided to suck it up. So there I was, one of the females in a large group of guys competing for a job with the police department with no guarantee of a job. In the end, before graduation, I was offered a job with the Sun Police Department, along with 5 guys who had trained alongside me, including our current Executive Vice President, Mike Freeman. It's funny, when you look back on life, you start to realize that things happen for a reason. The nickname Pepper was given to me by some police officer, Ron Martin, when I first started on the job. That was the name of the main character from the TV show Policewoman.
Very nice first response. So was there a specific moment or event that made you realize you'd eventually have to retire under an accidental disability claim?
Yes. On my first day after I was cleared to return to duty, I was dressing in the locker room by myself. I had my uniform on and I was putting on my gun belt. Everything was going as planned until I started to attach my left belt keeper. It would not go on, and after several attempts I became frustrated and thought, if I can't even put my gun belt on, how would I be able to help or save someone else, let alone protect myself? I took my gun belt off, threw it back into my locker, and walked into Chief Schneller's office crying. It was the first time in a very long time that I broke down. I told him I did not think I could do the job anymore. I felt defeated and I thought I let him down.
Man, that's really sad and, very powerful moment. And thank you for expressing your vulnerability in that moment, albeit years ago, but still for you to put it out on the waves for all of our listeners to hear is very, very powerful. So looking back, how did that transition from active duty to retirement affect you, both professionally and personally?
Well, I pushed law enforcement out of my life entirely, deciding that since I did not remember being a cop, it would be easy. Well, it wasn't. The people around me, friends and family, would not allow that to happen, whether they meant it or not. I don't think they knew it caused me frustration, but I finally realized that even though memories had disappeared, my gut instincts and reflexes never did. I was still too early in the healing process to understand everything, and I thought I had failed because I could not do the job anymore. In hindsight, I was still healing mentally, but I wasn't prepared to say that. It took my family, blood, blue and chosen, to help me see the value in my life once again. I tried many different things to find myself, and 25 years later, I started connecting the dots. I realized that God kept me on this earth for a reason, and giving up now was not an option. I won't say that it was easy. It sucks, big time. But what I can tell you is that it's a matter of what you choose to do with what you are handed.
Again, another very, very powerful response. That was a nice little opening and background. So obviously, we heard in the monologue about what this episode is going to be, and it's your personal story and your path about accidental disability retirements, aka ADRs, and the emotions associated with it. So kind of getting into your expertise a little bit. You've carved out a second career after you were forced out of being a police officer, helping others navigate ADR. What inspired you to specialize in this area?
Well, after several years of having no identity, I heard about Local 600, a local within the PBA that was created for retired officers. Feeling like I had no purpose, I started helping at the office and found myself around my blue family once again. Nate Horowitz, past Executive Vice President of Local 600, gave me the title Disability Liaison. To this day, it is my title. I may not be an expert in accidental disability, but I can search out the right people to help with problems when they arise.
No, that's great. I mean, just like being a delegate or a president active, we always say our Rolodexes are big. You obviously have a connection to this topic, and seeing you every day downstairs in the 600 office, you definitely have a passion for this, and you're a great person for the job. So again, regarding ADRs, what's the most common misconception officers have about that process?
Well, the most common misconception officers have about accidental disability retirement and the process is that it is very cut and dry. Although this can happen at times, it is best to create your army of people who will guide you if you need help or have an unanswered question. You will always have somebody to turn to. In my case, it was a pension-related disability. I was disabled from being a police officer and not disabled from being a person.
Yeah, I understand where you're getting at with that. Sometimes you think of disability and it's, people that unfortunately are bound to a wheelchair or something like that.
Right.
You were just basically told you can't do this job anymore, but you weren't quote unquote disabled where, you still had your functions about you and you were able to walk and things like that. So obviously it was a pension related term. It wasn't your actual day-to-day life per se.
It was pension and quote unquote Social Security disability.
No, that makes sense. So obviously there's a mental and emotional toll transitioning from, being a cop and being a part of this blue family to civilian life. So when you were forced into retirement from law enforcement, especially under these unexpected circumstances, it can hit hard. What was that shift like for you emotionally?
Well, I recall that after I decided to retire, I attended a party with my department like we always did. I was doing everything I thought I always did, thinking that I can keep up with the guys, but I couldn't. When I was ready to leave the party, Mike Freeman and several of my brothers in blue told me that I should leave my car in the parking lot and they would drive me home. Well, the typical Italian refused, and when I refused, Mike followed me home to my house. I remember talking to him afterwards, and that's when I began breaking down and cried. When I saw the frustration and tears in his eyes, it reminded me of my brother's reaction when he spoke of the accident. They weren't there for it, and they could not protect me from it. A year or two later, Mike confided in me that he thought he had lost me that night. He let me know that he was already on another call when my call came in, and he couldn't respond to help. He had to listen to dispatch and reports over the air. A good friend always reminded me, you lived it, we lived through it. I had to remember that although it's just a story for me, everyone else still has the emotions and memories of that day.
Yeah, obviously you had to live it and you still live it to this day. But, sometimes people forget that your brothers and sisters in blue that heard the radio, like Executive Vice President Freeman heard, they're dealing with things as well. And, a lot of our podcast episodes have touched on things like that. Peer liaison, peer response, mental health, the stigmas behind it. We're all battling things day in and day out, mentally, internally, externally. And, it sounds very powerful, the conversation the two of you had kind of touching on your accident and what he was feeling. So again, I really appreciate you sharing that. Did you find yourself missing the structure, camaraderie, or even the adrenaline of the job?
I didn't find myself missing the structure of police life. I always seemed to have the structure because that's how I was raised alongside my brother. Our father was in the Army during the Korean War, so my whole life was created around structure. It helps me to deal with my brain injury because I need routine to stay on track with my day and to help me process everything. As far as adrenaline is concerned, I don't remember what it's like, and I don't seem to experience it. And once again, it could be a result of my injury. It doesn't bother me, though. In fact, if I need to react, my police training kicks in, and I trust my gut reaction.
Yeah, once a cop, always a cop, right? Listen, you're 20 plus years post-retirement, but you know what? You had all that training for a reason in the police academy, and you had those bunch of years on the job before you unfortunately were faced with this accident. But again, it's always going to be inside of you until the day you're no longer on this earth, for sure. It's an interesting profession, it's a calling, and you definitely still have it and will always have it. Before we get back to the conversation, I want to take a moment to talk to you about the sponsor of this mid-roll, something that's here for you because it's ours. Blue Guardian Insurance is NJSPBA owned and designed with our members in mind. That means it's not just another insurance company. It's run by the people who understand our work, our families, and our needs. Whether it's protecting your home, your car, or your future, Blue Guardian has your back because it's built for us, by us. If you haven't already, check them out at www.pbainsure.com and see how they can help protect what matters most. Blue Guardian Insurance, our protection, our way. How did your sense of identity evolve post-retirement?
It took many years to finally feel comfortable in my daily life. Retiring from law enforcement, especially under unexpected circumstances, really sucks. I still go through bouts of feeling useless and having no purpose. I didn't like feeling this way, so I started to try everything possible to understand why I was still on this earth. I volunteer at Local 600, my church, and do my best to assist those in need.
That's all you could do, right? Just keep putting one foot in front of the other, pushing forward every day and taking things one day at a time. So I think in the grand scheme of things, this episode is about giving people that are in similar positions as you, that in the future are unfortunately going to be faced with this ADR, this accidental disability retirement crossroads, and giving people the hope that everything is not lost once you're not, quote unquote, putting the gun belt on and doing this profession day in and day out. You're always going to be a cop, but it just unfortunately is a pension related thing that you can't do the job anymore. So this question is hopefully what our listeners are really going to latch onto. So what advice would you give to officers who might not be mentally ready to hang it up, but have no choice due to illness or injury?
Being mentally ready to hang it up never really sits right, especially if you're taken out unexpectedly. I don't believe that you are prepared for it mentally. You may be physically ready to retire, but you must take your time and ask for guidance as you mentally prepare. Remember that once you retire, life will continue to move forward. The day I walked out the door for the last time was like time stood still for me. I was so caught up with the people around me and every minute of every day being filled with activity. And in the end, I realized that I need to reinvent myself. I did not want to become the old retired guy, or gal in my case, who continued to hang on reminiscing about the good old days. I know it's hard not to be on the job, but if circumstances allow, bow out gracefully so you could leave feeling good about yourself.
That's a great answer and great advice. Thank you for sharing that. All right, this might be a little funny. Did your view of the civilian world change once you were no longer wearing the badge?
Absolutely, especially this morning as I was driving around the parkway. I get frustrated when drivers lose their patience and think that they are the only ones who should be on the road. When I'm in situations like that, it's like being undercover and my reflexes kick in. I'm back on the job momentarily. It takes a minute or two to realize that I am now a civilian. Emergency lights and a ticket book are no longer my tools of the trade. I also realize that I'm acting like someone who used to pull over, and I respect officers too much on duty to have them chase me.
Especially with all those pursuit rules now. And you don't want to create more paperwork for the guys.
Never.
So I guess it's good that you count 1,000, 2,000, take the deep breath and don't perform a felony car stop on the parkway because people are passing on the shoulder.
Absolutely.
What helped you most in adapting to, the quote unquote new norm after leaving the force, whether that's routine, support networks, or purpose?
There's never just one thing. It's frustrating. I believe you must go down before you can heal and grow, both inside and out. Along with building my army, I learned how to find peace by turning off the TV, listening to music during the day. It took several years of working on myself since I was still healing. I continued to work out, volunteer, talk with a therapist, and help others in need. A part-time job came my way after a fellow retired officer, Mitch Fenton, invited me to Baltusrol Golf Club just to have a cup of coffee. Mitch is chief of security, offered a position as the club's first female security guard. I decided to take on the challenge. After working once again, I soon realized that Mitch did not let me get away with anything. He always finds ways for me to challenge myself, and he definitely doesn't take my bullshit. I also found my way back to church. I truly believe that God puts people in your life for a reason, whether it's for today, tomorrow, or years down the road.
Amen to that. That's a great response. So let's reflect a little bit. This has been a pretty powerful episode. And again, I appreciate you sharing your story, as difficult it may be to sort of relive some of the moments that, at that crossroads put you where you are today. What's one thing you wish someone had told you before you retired under accidental disability?
Well, before I retired on accident disability or any kind of disability, I wish somebody would have mentioned the possibility of being injured on the job. I know that's the last thing that you want to think of when you first start, but having that information in my back pocket would have greatly helped me, my coworkers, friends, and family.
Yeah, no, that's true. It's such a simple response, but again, it's like listening to this. Know your contract, ask the tough questions, have the tough conversations, be prepared. Even though, luckily the majority of officers listening don't suffer an accidental disability, some of you listening are, and that's the harsh reality of this job. Just be prepared. Know what you're entitled to help you not have that extra stress of suffering an injury where you might not be able to do this job, navigating those feelings, but then on top of the financial obligations of stressing out about health insurance and things like that. Just be prepared. Do your due diligence to ask people in the know, reach out to people like Debbie at Local 600, ask questions, ask those tough questions, and get yourself educated on topics. So Debbie, how important is peer support during this transition?
Peer support is key during this transition, but it has its place. I believe support is needed for your coworkers, family, friends in the days and weeks following the incident. They need to know what they may expect during the healing process. The injured officer is surrounded by medical teams, family, fellow officers doing their best to get them stabilized. Everyone is hoping and praying that they will recover. The officer needs support from peers when they begin to heal and are ready to return to work or are considering retirement. This, from experience, is the most demeaning part of the healing process. It truly sucks because life continues when your world stops. Peer support is helpful, but I wish it would have been in place when I was injured. Things worked out for me because my family, blood and blue, were always there to pick me up when I fell, mentally and physically.
Yeah, no, that's huge. I mean, obviously, peer support has really changed over the years. It's becoming a little bit of a more thorough process, more of a conversation that is spoken about, and it's really not taboo. I mean, look, we've done episodes with Luke Cialo here, our peer liaison coordinator, vice president of the PBA, and, we're having those tough conversations, and we are putting out information, having Debbie on here today talking about this topic. Hopefully, if it helps even one person, we did our job to help people navigate ADR and be more educated moving forward. So if a current officer is listening right now and silently struggling, physically, mentally, what would you want them to hear?
Well, a good friend in EMT was with me on the scene of my accident. Texted me a picture of a t-shirt that declared, "When something bad happens, you have three choices. You can let it define you, let it destroy you, or you can let it strengthen you." I chose the latter. After 25 years, it hit me. It wasn't the uniform that defined me, but it was I who defined the uniform.
Man, that's pretty damn powerful right there. I have nothing at all to add. What's been the most fulfilling part of your post-law enforcement career?
The most fulfilling part is actually finding my voice and trusting in myself to pave the road for officers forced to retire in accident disability.
Yeah, you got your calling. As unfortunate as it was to experience what you experienced, here you are for thousands and thousands to hear about your story. It's extremely powerful. And again, I commend you for coming here and having the strength to talk about it. So lastly, again, thank you for being here. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you sit here and share a few minutes with us and our audience. Any parting words of wisdom for officers nearing the end of their careers, especially those unsure of what comes next?
Yes, as I expressed in my Stand with Honor story, to all my brothers and sisters in blue, past, present, and future, please remember to make every day count because you never know when you'll be called to reinvent yourself. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great way to sum it up. Debbie, thank you so much. You were great, and we hope to talk to you again soon. That's it for today's episode of Union Strong NJSPBA Voices Podcast. If you enjoyed the conversation, be sure to follow the podcast and share it with fellow members so we can keep these important stories and updates reaching everyone who needs to hear them. We'll be back soon with more news, interviews, and insights that matter to New Jersey law enforcement. Until next time, stay informed, stay united, stay union strong.